Part 2. Summer Holidays on the Farm. Chapter 3. Old Friends and New Distance. It took Luna 2 days to properly recover from her breakdown. She slept past noon the next day and wandered around her room until finally coming down to help with supper. She knew it was silly, it was all so long ago. She hadn't thought about them for years, not like that. The pairing of guilt and loneliness had just struck her unexpectedly. As she set the table and watched the family prepare supper, some of those heavy feelings finally began to soften. She wasn't alone here, and all of those painful memories could be left in the past where they belonged. While clearing up from supper, Luna heard a truck pull into the drive, and in a few moments David's family was at the door, exchanging hugs with her aunt and uncle. David peeked around the corner, scanning the room until he spotted Luna with dishes in hand. It had been a year since she'd seen him, and he had grown. David was a year younger than her. They had gone to the same primary school and been close before she'd gone off to boarding school for secondary education. Last summer, David had come around and helped on the farm a couple of days a week. It had almost been like when they were kids, but not quite. David seemed hesitant to come in. Luna went to the kitchen and poured them some cordial, waving David in and gesturing to his usual seat at the counter. "Thanks," he smiled, taking the glass and then relaxing into the familiar chair. "When did you get back from school?" Luna asked, though she already knew the answer. "Last night," David replied. "Same as you." The first year Luna had returned, she had gone straight to David's house. They had sat outside for hours discussing the year they had been apart. But things had changed since then. "How long is your vacation this year?" she asked, trying to fill the awkward silence. "Same as last year," David answered half-heartedly. They sat for a few moments, each drinking their cordial, unsure how to carry on the conversation that had once flowed so easily between them. "Luna," her uncle called from the deck where the adults were enjoying drinks in the evening air. "I set up the goal and have an extra stick if you want to have a practice with David while he's here." Luna smiled at the suggestion, grateful for something to do with her hands. Chapter 4. Missed Connections. The next week was busy as Uncle Mike wanted to get ahead on the farm chores so everyone could take a break for the Christmas holidays. This meant rushing around trying to fit 2 weeks' worth of moving animals, fixing fences, and general cleanup into just a few days. Luna didn't mind. After so long away from the farm, she loved zipping around on the motorbikes, feeling the wind in her hair and the familiar rhythm of farm life. During the week, David had come by twice, but Luna had missed him, being busy out on the property. On the final day before the holidays, she found David sitting by the dog kennels when she came back for her tea break. Luna went into the wool shed and waved David over to join her. "Cup of tea?" Uncle Mike asked as Luna looked for the cake tin. She found it full of carrot cake, and Luna smiled, nodding at her uncle with her mouth full. She offered the tin to David. Once they both had a piece of cake and a steaming cup of tea, Luna took a careful look at David. He always ate so carefully, taking such delicate bites, while Luna considered reaching for her third piece. Always polite, David asked Uncle Mike about his new sheepdog, and Uncle Mike began a long story about buying her and how easy she had been to train. David listened intently, smiling and nodding along with the tale. Uncle Mike finally finished and headed out to clean up and prepare for tomorrow's stock sale. "Do you want to come?" Luna asked, getting up and stretching. We left one of the two-wheelers in the South River pasture. David followed her out and climbed onto the four-wheeler as Luna kicked it into neutral. "You can still ride a two-wheeler?" Luna called back to David as they pulled out onto the main road. "Of course," David shouted over the crunching gravel. "Unlike you, I come every holiday and help out." A few cars on the road led to a stop-and-start trip to the southern pasture. "You might be home every holiday, but your parents have a dairy farm, right? That's barely a farm at all. No need for a two-wheeler anyway," Luna called out as David opened the first gate. "Don't let my dad hear you say that," David called back with a laugh. "The dairy farm is his retirement dream." David jumped back on and the four-wheeler crept up the hilly pasture to the gate where the two-wheeler was parked. "You haven't come to visit," David commented, half to himself. "Why not?" "You know I haven't been home much the last 2 years," Luna replied. "School started to feel a bit like home." She paused, then added quietly, "Strange as that sounds." Isn't the farm your home? David asked. Yeah, Luna replied, leaving it hanging in the air between them. Luna never liked talking about her life before she came to live on the farm. Conversations with David too often brushed up against this sensitive topic. She knew David had always wanted to ask her about her mother and father, why she lived with Uncle Mike and Aunt Jan, but he never had. Just once in year 3 of primary school, the year she had arrived on the farm, she could still remember his look of shock when she had simply gotten up and walked out of the classroom to avoid answering a question about her family. She had done that many times as a child. Eventually, no one asked. At boarding school, Luna could provide simple responses like, "My parents work abroad, and I don't have any siblings." No one questioned it. It was so much easier that way. Luna stopped at the top gate and waited for David to hop off. "You're okay on the two-wheeler, right?" Luna asked. "Yeah, of course," David said as he strode over to the bike and began inspecting it. "Where's the helmet?" David asked, circling around to the back. Luna left the four-wheeler running, strode over and climbed on the bike. 2 kicks and its piercing whine began advertising its well-rusted muffler. "Careful on the four-wheeler," Luna called as she tore down the hill and back to the main road, leaving David to follow at his own pace. Chapter 5. An Unexpected Delivery. For the last week of her holidays, Luna kept herself as busy as possible. She was on the farm from dawn till supper, working alongside Uncle Mike and the dogs. The farm was exactly the right place to be. If she had any energy left in the evening, she practiced hockey on the back lawn. David came by to defend goal twice, and they ended those evenings with cake and tall glasses of milk on the deck, talking about Christmas and New Year's, which were only a few days away. David's extended family were all coming to his place this year, and Luna was invited along with her aunt and uncle. After David left one evening, Luna considered going. She knew David would like her to be there, but some part of her just couldn't bring herself to say yes. It was the same part that kept her from joining anything that resembled a family gathering. Uncle Mike and Aunt Jan were different. They were all she had, and they had been there from the moment everything had changed in her life. Luna was preparing pre-supper snacks and setting out glasses for drinks when David pulled into the drive with his mother and father. He had that infectious grin on his face, the one that said he was as happy as he could be and bursting to share something special. Luna's aunt met the party at the door, and Luna watched through the window as hugs and wishes of Merry Christmas were exchanged all around. As they came in, presenting their contributions to supper, 2 more cars arrived with extended family. David and his father knocked on the door even though they could see Luna through the window. Their arms were full of food and presents for the tree. Luna waved them in and looked back to the cheese board she was organizing. Suddenly, a small box was slid across the table toward her. She looked up to see David beaming at her. For a moment, she thought it was a present from him and started to turn to get her gift for him. But she stopped when she saw the box was from the post, and then anxiously searched until she found the return address. It was the annual package from her father, always arriving a few days before Christmas, always a surprise while being perfectly on time. Luna immediately took the box from the table and gave David a sharp look. What was he thinking, bringing in her mail? No, she realized, this package was too large for the mailbox. David must have stopped at the post office and convinced their postal worker to let him bring it to Luna himself. Nancy was his cousin, but still, it was presumptuous of him. "Presents?" David half-asked, half-stated. Luna took the box to the pantry and set it on top of 2 unopened boxes of soft drinks. It could wait until later, she thought, when she was alone and could deal with it properly. "I've never seen a present from your mom and dad under your tree," David questioned, pointing back at the half-decorated spruce in the living room. "No, you haven't," Luna said in a dry voice. "Why don't you help me finish it?" she added, picking up a set of mini lights that needed to be untangled. They spent the afternoon finishing the tree, then stringing lights on the veranda, and finally all the way out to the mailbox, along the neat hedge that bordered the driveway. After replacing half a dozen bulbs in the fading light, they switched everything on and were rewarded with cheers from inside the house. The rest of the family had returned from work on the farm, supper preparations were underway, and drinks for all ages were being distributed. A host of cousins from Australia had arrived, all older and with their children. Luna knew most of them, but not well. The youngest of the visiting family, Peter and Jessica, had been to the farm before to visit. They'd had wonderful times together. When they saw her on the sofa, they immediately competed to see who could still fit on her lap. After being gently slipping off her lap for the second time, Jessica stamped her feet and complained, "You like me best, don't you?" Luna couldn't help but laugh. Peter just held onto her neck, ignoring his sister's tugging at his feet. "There's room for both of you," Luna said, trying to accommodate them both on her knees. The twins wanted to know all about her school and whether she would play bees and wasps with them tomorrow. She promised that she would, as long as they went to bed early tonight. They were always trying to stay up well past their bedtime, and Luna enjoyed their boundless energy. Luna's uncle sat down beside her on the sofa as the evening wound down and put his arm gently around her shoulders. "I can only imagine how you must feel," he said, giving her a gentle squeeze. "But it will get easier now that it's settled. The divorce has been coming for years." After a few minutes of comfortable silence, he got up to help two visiting neighbors to the door. Luna knew it all, and understood better than her uncle that it had only been a matter of time. The box that had arrived was likely not one of gifts, but some of her old belongings sent from their former home in the South Island. Her father had told her he would return to clean out their old house in Otago before finally selling it. She hadn't thought of that sad old house for years. Now that it seemed suddenly gone forever, she missed it and everything it had been home to. For just a moment, she wasn't sitting on the soft brown sofa in her uncle's living room. She was back on the front steps of her old house, looking out over lawns that stretched all the way down to a rushing river. The water leaped and crashed against its banks as if trying to escape. The lawns had been the darkest green, and the air had been full of bird songs and insect sounds. Before her mind's eye could travel into the house itself, Luna pulled herself back to her comfortable place on the old brown sofa. The quiet house told her that everyone had gone home for the evening. Chapter 6. Secrets in the Attic. The next few days came and went with the gentle buzz of the holidays. Visitors, food, and drink filled the house, and Luna felt herself floating along with the festive spirit. Christmas morning had brought her a new hockey stick, some books, and a new pair of farm boots. All things she needed and had recognized under the tree. The box from her father slipped her mind until Boxing Day, when the living room was cleaned up to prepare for a New Year's gathering. She found the box on her bed that night, as though that was where it belonged. After a shower, she sat on her bed and tried to decide what to do with it. The last few days had softened the hard edges around her feelings about the memories that were no doubt wrapped up inside. What would it hurt to open it? To touch something from home? And for a moment maybe not feel so alone? She dug her nails into the packaging tape and freed one side of the box. Opening it from the side and folding back the cardboard, she saw the edge of an old wooden box, lacquered a deep shade of bronze brown. She knew the box just from its color immediately. It had been her grandmother's, then her mother's, then hers. She had stored her most valued possessions in it. Things an 8-year-old had wanted to keep safe, and a few things her brothers had treasured as well. At that thought, she knew she couldn't open it. Not yet. She closed the cardboard box and tried to reattach the remaining tape. She stood back and stared at the package, unsure what to do. After a few minutes, she picked it up and put it in the hallway outside her door. It would need to go in the attic, out of sight, at least for now, she told herself. The summer holidays sped by for Luna. 2 friends from school came to the farm for her last weekend. They loved the four-wheelers and wanted to try riding the old horse that refused a saddle, but would allow riders to mount bareback for very slow walks around its small pasture. In the evenings, they talked about school, hockey, and boys. Her friends were excited to get back to school. There were 3 hockey tournaments in the first month, and the team was strong this year. Luna loved having her friends at the farm, but she also felt strangely unsettled by having this kind of companionship at home. It made her feel oddly lonely. Until this week, the farm had been separate from friends and school. Now she wasn't sure what it was supposed to be. That night, lying in bed, she felt guilty for feeling conflicted about something that should have made her happy. The next morning, as her friends packed to leave and begged her to come into town early with them, she knew what she needed to do. She smiled and promised to see them both soon. She hugged them warmly and waved as they drove down the driveway. Lovely friends you have, her uncle remarked as he pulled on his overalls and boots. Got time for a few chores before you pack? Luna smiled and grabbed her work gloves from their peg by the door. That night, after a shower and a good supper, Luna packed her things for school. She had been half-packed for a week and had even considered heading into town with her friends when they left. As she folded her clothes, her uncle appeared in her doorway. I spoke to your father, and he said he might come for a visit at the end of your holidays. He paused, then added carefully, if that's what you wanted. Her uncle left that hanging in the air as he helped pack up some leftovers for her to take back to school and gave out a few more hugs. Luna tried to focus on the return to school and, beyond that, university preparation. But somehow the shadow of that time and place before moving to the farm was still there, waiting for her. Right then, she decided that the box and everything else from her past needed to stay locked away. She grabbed the flashlight from its place by the door and picked up the box under one arm. It's dusty up there, her uncle called as she climbed the stairs. Open a window, or you'll be coughing and sneezing all night. Like her mother, Luna had developed an annoying allergy to dust, but she wasn't going to let that stop her. Setting the box on the floor and stuffing the flashlight in her pocket, she jumped up to grab the short rope attached to the attic staircase. She caught it on the first try and held on as the stairs creaked and finally swung down from the ceiling. She unfolded them, grabbed the box again, and flicking on her flashlight, braved the dusty darkness above. The attic was enormous, with empty boxes stacked against the far wall from a move decades past. She picked her way through stacks of magazines, old chairs, and 2 tables in pieces. Scanning with her flashlight beam, she spotted what she remembered seeing before. 6 carefully organized boxes nestled into a corner by themselves. These were things she had brought with her from her home in the South Island. They had never been opened. She could remember her aunt encouraging her to go through them together and take some of her things to the room they had prepared for Luna. That was 8 years ago, but it felt like forever. Looking at the boxes under her flashlight beam, she realized she wasn't afraid of them anymore. She had simply left them and that part of her life behind. She had no interest in going back. Luna set the small box from her father down on top of her unopened belongings with a puff of dust. She squeezed her eyes shut and held her breath, but it was too late. She sneezed, which filled the air with even more of her enemy. She kept her eyes closed and pulled her t-shirt up over her nose and mouth, then sat down on the floor. She resolved to wait for the dust to settle rather than cough and sneeze her way through a hasty retreat to the stairs. Putting her back against the stack of boxes, they shifted slightly, and she heard a light thud and the musical tinkle of breaking glass. She looked at the box from her father, now on the ground beside her, with renewed interest. It seemed she had broken something she hadn't even wanted to open. She examined the fallen box through squinted eyes to avoid the dust, and she noticed something that made her heart skip. The return address was from their old home in the South Island, but it wasn't from her father. Luna received birthday cards and Christmas cards from him every year and knew his handwriting well. Someone else had sent this. Was this from someone now living in the old house? Had her mother and father finally sold it? Luna knew they had tried for years, but her father had told her they could never get a decent price for it, and they had given up. Luna's curiosity was piqued. She had to know what the new owners of her old house had sent her, and why. She waited a few more minutes for the dust to settle, then turned the box upright and pulled out her pocket knife to cut away the remaining tape. Pulling the cardboard flaps back, she found not her grandmother's wooden box, but an old yet well-cared-for miniature trunk. Right there on the top of it, engraved in a tiny brass plaque, were 3 names, her own and her 2 brothers. Luna's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't seen this little trunk in 9 years. It had belonged to all 3 of them, a place where they kept their most precious shared treasures. She had completely forgotten it existed. With trembling hands, she lifted the small trunk from its cardboard prison. Whatever was inside would be a message from her past, and possibly, just possibly, from the 2 people she had been trying so hard not to think about. The trunk felt heavier than she remembered, full of secrets she wasn't sure she was ready to uncover. But as she sat there in the dusty attic, surrounded by the remnants of her old life, Luna knew there was no going back now. Whatever was inside this trunk had found its way to her for a reason. She took a deep breath and reached for the tiny brass latch.